All right. Welcome to Monday School, y'all. As you can see, Rocky has taken his Christ-likeness much more seriously. He's grown facial hair, and his hair is quite a bit longer.
No, I can't.
Whatever. For those of you who are listening on audio and wondering what on earth is going on, we got Josh with us as opposed to Rocky. Rocky quit.
As opposed to Rocky.
You got fired. Isn't that what I said?
Yeah, I'm opposing Rocky.
Okay. So, by the way, just to give you just to quickly brief you on your role here on this podcast, you are the representative of the people.
Yes, right. I am representing the people.
Right. So,
who are you two representing?
So I'm representing myself. I'm representing myself. I don't know what Emmanuel is doing.
I'm just here.
Yeah, he's just here.
How did that happen?
So, essentially, if I say something that's like really off the rails, like, if you think I'm off my rocker,
gotcha.
Check me.
I will.
Yeah.
I got you.
I know you will.
Yeah. I need someone else to represent me.
Quick, help me light the fire under the steak. Anyway, so today we're actually going to be in the text of Jonah. Far be it from us to ever have a podcast in which we don't open up the text. Right. That's, of course, a reference to last podcast.
Yeah, I haven't looked at that yet.
Yeah, whatever, dude. But in any case, so we're going to play a game as we read through Jonah. We're going to read through all of chapter 1 today. And like I said, we're going to play a bit of a game. You, Emmanuel, you're going to read from Jonah chapter 1. And I'm going to stop you and ask you questions along the way. Right? And what I'm hoping to do is, my goal is to stop you from getting to the end. Right? You're going to read, and I'm going to stop you. And if I can hold you off long enough that your sanity starts to collapse, I win. Right? If you get to the end of the story, you win.
Okay. So
right?
You're trying to prevent people from reading scripture.
In a sense, great. Thanks for putting the worst possible spin on that. Now, of course, there's no way you'd make it, right?
Right.
Which is why we have backup, right? You also will be reading from Jonah chapter 1.
Incredible.
And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of ping pong this.
All right,
right?
ping pong.
I'm
good at ping pong.
Just tag teams.
Yes.
So when I stop you with a question, I'm going to ask the question, right? And unless I indicate otherwise, as soon as I finish my question, you start reading from where he left off. See what I'm saying?
As soon as you finish your question.
When I finish the question, right? So we're going to read, now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai, right? And I ask, let's say, what does Amittai mean in Hebrew? Right? As soon as I say that, you keep reading, arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, etc.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
I do. Yes.
Right.
How are you going to answer that question?
Well, it's not. Well, the point is, we're just going to ask the questions for now.
Okay.
And then, depending on how long this goes, we'll either do the answers in this podcast, or we'll have to split it and do another podcast.
Incredible.
All right. So, if you don't mind, let's hop right into it. This is a whale of a tale, and we don't want to. I'm sorry.
He said a whale of a tale. I love it. Love it.
I love my life so much. Emmanuel, go.
Okay. The Lord gave this message to Jonah, son of Amittai.
Sorry, you said who gave the message?
The Lord.
The Lord. Let's keep the name of God in mind as we go through.
All right. The son of Amittai saying.
Now, hang on. You missed a piece. You said the word of the Lord came to who?
To Jonah.
What does Jonah mean in Hebrew? Don't worry, you don't have to answer. Just keep going.
That's good.
Son of Amittai.
And what does Amittai mean in Hebrew? That's a good question as well. Right?
What does Hebrew mean in Hebrew?
Well, Hebrew is ivri in Hebrew, and it
means
means to go through. So it refers to them crossing through the Red Sea or the Jordan River.
We've already learned something.
There you go.
Boom. Underline that in your bio.
So, hang on. So, Jonah, son of Amittai, sang, and then I don't know whose turn it was.
Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and call out against it, for their evil has come up before me.
All right, so there's a couple things. One, right, arise, go to Nineveh, that great city. What is it exactly that makes Nineveh a great city? Right, then it says, and call, your version says call out against it?
Yes. What does your version say?
It might say the same thing.
What version are you reading from?
Announce my judgment against it. NLT.
Okay.
Yours says announce my judgment?
Yeah.
Wow. So
One of us should have a King James here. Does anyone have a King James?
He used to.
I usually bring my King James, but I was like, the people probably don't understand when I read from the King James.
I love the King James. I'm currently reading from ESV. This is my second study.
I prefer ESV myself. So hang on. So yours says proclaim my judgment.
Yeah, announce
right?
my judgment. Yeah.
Announce my judgment. Yours says call out against it. Both of those are way more aggressive than the actual Hebrew, right? The Hebrew comes from the root al, which just means onto. Call out onto it.
Okay.
Right? Does not at all indicate
not against.
It can mean that, but very rarely. It can mean, it just seems it's too aggressive for what the tone of the text is suggesting.
Is it though? Because
what's happened here, I think, if you want my personal opinion, is the translator has read the whole story of Jonah.
Okay.
Right? And is reading back onto this piece of the story what happens later. But I don't think it's necessary to do that. The text of this text by itself, especially to start off the story, is it's much more tame than the translation seems to indicate.
Okay.
That's my take on it, and I'm basing that,
Was that more on like a cry, like the Lord saying to Jonah, "Arise, go to the great city," and basically proclaim to him my mercy kind of a deal,
not necessarily merciful. It's more neutral, right?
Neutral.
It's not so much that he's calling out against it or calling out in favor of it. He's calling out to it.
Not in favor, but giving them a chance. Is that what the Lord's doing here? Isn't that what he did?
It is ultimately what he's going to do. But in this case, it seems it's a much more neutral word is what I'm getting at.
Okay.
Just
right.
The
just
Hebrew
informing them. The
Okay.
judgment is coming.
Essentially,
Well,
right?
yeah.
But
Okay.
is it even judgment? Keep going. So, and call out against it.
Because I've seen how wicked its people are.
Right. Yours says wicked. What does your translation
For
say?
their evil has come up before me.
Right. So, again, this word, ra, in the Hebrew is, I'm not going to say tamer, but it's a tricky word. Right? The word ra means more something like bad. Right? Just general. You'll notice yours says wickedness, right? Which is very moral, right? Yours says evil, which is kind of moral as well. Other translations will say calamity. Other translations will say disaster, right? But you'll notice those two aren't necessarily moral. Later on, we're going to see this word used to mean discomfort, which is certainly not moral, right? This word just means anything generally that is not pleasant or not good, right? And what that does is it creates this sort of ambiguity about what exactly is it that God's saying. We know that the word against is not really present. It's just kind of call out to it because something bad is coming, right? Whether that is the badness, the wickedness of the Ninevites, whether it's the fact that the Ninevites are about to be destroyed, right? Whether it's the fact that Ninevites are destroying, that's not clarified in this text. We don't really know that for certain. We don't know what exactly God is getting at, right? It's a very vague call that God gives to Jonah. Right? I just want to point that out. Also, going back to what we said about the great city, right? That word gadol in the Hebrew is going to appear, I believe it's 11 times in the book of Jonah. It occurs again and again and again. Now, Emmanuel, you may remember this. Josh, I'm sorry, but you'll be informed right now. The Hebrews are very much interested in the center of things, right? And you'll notice that 11 is an odd number, which means that it has a center, 6, right? So let's pay attention to the word gadol as it appears. I'll point it out as we go. And let's see where the 6th mention of it is. It may be important. The same goes, by the way, with the word ra. It appears 7 times or 8 times, depending on how you count. And let's pay attention to the 4th time it appears. right? The center time, right? Again, it may be important. Let's see. Go to Nineveh, that great city, for its evil has come up before me. Emmanuel, go.
But Jonah got up and went in the opposite direction to get away from the Lord. He went down to the port of Joppa where he
Does it actually say the opposite direction?
Yeah.
It doesn't say Tarshish?
It here.
Well, no,
but Jonah
it's-
rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord.
That's what the Hebrew says.
No, 'cause
Okay.
in mine it's later on because it says he went down to the port of Joppa where he found a ship leaving for Tarshish.
Yeah, but yours is gonna have it twice, which is what it says in the
Yeah,
Hebrew. Right.
a ship going to Tarshish in that.
That's so strange. I've never seen
Yeah.
just the complete
NLT
omission.
for the win.
Yeah. The complete omission
Yes.
of a word. That's awesome. So I like this translation better, right? If you don't mind, I'm gonna pretend like you're the one who said it. I'm gonna address you. So Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish, right? Rocky so astutely noted last time that Jonah is not running from Nineveh; he's running from God, right? But you'll also notice that he's running to Tarshish, right? So he's running from God to Tarshish. So he has a destination in mind. So we're going to want to ask, where's Tarshish? Also, in this case, Tarshish is in the feminine, Tarshisha in the Hebrew, right? He rose to flee to Tarshish, away from the presence of the Lord. Actually, it's your turn.
Okay. From the presence of the Lord, he went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish.
Why go to Joppa when Acre is closer, 40 miles closer, actually? So Jonah is from Gath-Hefer. Acre is about 20 miles away it's a port city, 20 miles away from Gath-Hefer. Joppa is like 60 miles out of his way.
Suggesting that there was not a boat in the other location going to Tarshish, suggesting he wanted to go there specifically?
Perhaps, but you also got to keep in mind, it doesn't say he went to Acre and didn't find a ship. Right?
Right.
And there's no way he could have known one way or the other.
Right.
He deliberately goes away from Acre toward Joppa. Right? Just to put it in like geographical perspective, Acre is basically like the tip top of Israel. Joppa is present day Tel Aviv Yasso.
I don't even know where that is.
It's the capital of Israel.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm just going to be open with you guys, okay? I'm very homeschooled. And
It's all good, man.
everything I know...
Listen, I'm homeschooled too, so...
Yeah, but I'm the same way, right? Everything I know, I taught myself. You just taught yourself more.
Listen, it's all good, man.
My stupidity is teaching anyone listening to this so much.
By the way, I guarantee you I will get canceled if I don't correct myself right now. So I said Tel Aviv Yasso is the capital of Israel. I mean the UN recognized capital of Israel, not the actual capital, which is Jerusalem, which is the U.S. actually recognizes Jerusalem as the capital.
Well, that's how I would, because that's...
Yeah. So Jerusalem
We're
is
talking about the UN.
Yeah. So Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, right? The UN recognizes Tel Aviv Yasso as the capital of Israel, and I'm actually not sure which Israel itself recognizes as its capital.
Probably Jerusalem.
I don't know, actually. Anyway, I just figured I'd correct that right now before I get canceled.
Incredible.
So he goes down to Joppa, finds a ship going to Tarshish. Emmanuel.
He bought a ticket and went on board, hoping to escape from the Lord by sailing to Tarshish.
Went down to Joppa. He said he bought a ticket, right?
Yes.
Now, you'll notice that, like, back in the day, you don't buy a ticket onto a ship before you get to your destination. I think of like a cab in the city, right? You don't pay the cab driver before, you pay the cab driver after you get there, right? And that's the way it was back then as well. So it's funny that he's buying his ticket, paying the fare, before he even gets on the boat, right? So we may want to. That's just a funny little detail that the rabbis point out.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Keep going."
Oh, where are we?
Pay the fare. Or
Pay the fare. Oh, I don't have pay the fare.
yours is ESV, isn't it?
I have I do.
Yeah.
I went down into it to go with him to Tarshish, away from the presence of the Lord.
Hang on. Do you smell that? There's something going on here.
Oh, I was like,
right?
fish?
There's something fishy in this story, and it's not the fish at the end of the chapter, right? So you'll notice we have at the top of this verse, away from the presence of the Lord. At the bottom of this verse, we have away from the presence of the Lord. We have going with them to Tarshish, kind of in the middle-ish. Going with them to Tarshish in the middle-ish. And if we remember that lesson on chiasms, we may be thinking, we got to find the center, right? What is the center of this verse? If you're looking at it that way, if you if you have like the away from the presence of the Lord as the bookends, and then Tarshish is kind of the body. What's the center? What's the focus of this verse?
He went down to the port of Joppa, where he found a ship leaving for Tarshish.
Well, he's found a ship leaving for Tarshish, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the body. We're going to think about what's immediately after that.
He bought a ticket.
He bought a ticket, right? And that's what this piece of the text is highlighting, right? That funny little detail we noted, right? So it's actually, this is important, right? This is what the author of the text is trying to tell us. He puts it smack dab in the middle and says, pay attention. He just bought the ticket, right? We want to figure out why it is that they're highlighting this detail, right? One other thing as well. You said going with them to Tarshish, right? The Hebrew actually, which the English translators thought they were clever and tried to correct, the Hebrew text actually says entering Tarshish. Found a ship entering Tarshish, which is kind of funny, a funny way to put it, because it's in Joppa, right? How could it be entering Tarshish if it's in Joppa, right? And again, I assume that the English translators think, that must be a mistake, and they correct it into going to Joppa, right? But there's a reason why they say entering Tarshish, right? Away from the presence of the Lord.
Yeah, but the Lord hurled a great wind
Gadol,
upon the
that's
sea.
the second time.
Where?
The
Great
Lord
wind.
hurled a great wind upon the sea.
Oh, great! I got it.
Right?
Great. Okay.
Yep.
Upon the sea, and there was a mighty
Gadol
tempest on
again.
the sea.
It's the same word,
A mighty.
mighty, right? So that's three.
Okay. So that the ship threatened to break up.
So this isn't actually a question, but I just love the Hebrew in this. The ship was thinking about breaking up.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
I just love like the poetry.
Craziest verse in the Bible I've ever read before.
The ship was like,
thinking.
I'm thinking, I'm just gonna come unglued. Like,
I'm hanging up my sails. I'm going home. I'm clocking out.
that is kind of the implication. Like the ship is just like, let's just go back. Emmanuel.
Fearing for their lives, the desperate sailors shouted to their gods for help and threw the cargo overboard.
To their gods?
Yes.
As in plural?
Yes.
As in more than one?
Yes.
That's not what mine says.
Yours says calling out each to their own gods.
Each to his god, yeah.
Yeah.
Their own individual.
Their own individual gods. Mm-hmm. So we left from Israel, right? And we're now on this ship going to Tarshish. And we seem to have representatives of the world religions on this boat, right? So who are these sailors? What does this represent, symbolically speaking, right? Is a question we may want to ask ourselves. You also said that they're starting to throw away what?
The cargo.
The cargo, right? That word is the word that is used earlier when it says that God hurled the great wind, right?
Oh, and they threw the cargo over.
So they're hurling the cargo, right? Yours is going to translate them both as hurled. God hurls the great wind. And then the sailors hurl the cargo, right? Josh.
Okay, but Jonah had gone down into the inner part of the ship and had lain down and was fast asleep.
2 points. First of all, there is no indication in the Hebrew that Jonah had gone down prior to the start of the storm. There's no past, present, or future tense in Hebrew, right? Also, when it says, but Jonah went down, right, the word is the same word used for and, right? So it could just mean, and Jonah went down.
Right, this says, but Jonah had gone down.
Right, but that's not in the Hebrew.
Right.
Right.
I understand.
So it could just mean, and Jonah went down, right? It could be, right, and this is a possibility. I'm not saying this actually has to be the case. But it could be the storm whips up, and Jonah says, I'm going to take a nap. Right? He's totally cool with this.
I think he knows it's God, though.
He probably does.
Like...
Right? The sailors seem to understand that there's something divine about this storm, right?
Or they're just afraid and they're crying out to their gods either
Or
way.
they're just afraid, one way or the other, right? But there does seem to be some like indication of the supernatural here, right? And Jonah seems to perhaps Jonah recognizes it as well, and he's all right, cool. I'm gonna go to bed, right? Another thing, there's a lot of going down, right? You have Jonah going down to Tarshish. No, I'm sorry, down to Joppa, finding a ship going to Tarshish. He paid the fare and went down into it, right? And then here again we have Jonah. It says Jonah went down to the inner part of the ship, and then he laid down, right? And then he went to sleep, and the word for sleep in the Hebrew is a play on the word for down, right? So 4 or 5 times, depending on how you count, he's going down, right? So we may want to ask ourselves again, why this repetition of going down, right? Go ahead. Or, I'm sorry, not you, Emmanuel. Yep.
So the captain went down after him. How can you sleep at a time like this? He shouted. Get up and pray to your God. Maybe he will pay attention to us.
I'm starting to
Pharaoh.
dislike your translation exceedingly. It masks so much. So, again, what that masks, yours is going to translate it rightly.
Glad I came along.
Yeah. See,
Dang,
in case you haven't been able to tell, in preparation for this podcast, I memorized the book of Jonah in the ESV, right? Which is, in any case. So yours translation says, the captain says, get up, right? Unless I am otherwise mistaken, what God said earlier is arise, right? Those are the same word, right? So the captain is echoing what God said earlier, right? Which is kind of funny. We may want to think about why, again, that's the case. Why they're playing on this idea. Go ahead. Arise, call out to your God, I think is the next thing he says, right?
Arise, call to your God. Perhaps the God will give a thought to us that we may not perish.
Yep. Keep going.
And they said to one another,
Who's they?
I would assume the sailors.
You would assume the sailors, except those aren't the people who were talking last.
Was it not the... Oh, the captain said to... Wait. Well, that's weird. Yeah, who is that?
Right. It says they. And if we were just reading this plainly, we might think this is, that this is the captain and Jonah who are making this wager. Right? On a plain reading. There's going to be some indication that it is actually the sailors, perhaps, but it's kind of weird that the Hebrew puts it this way. Then they said to one another. Right? So, go ahead, Emmanuel.
Well, so mine says the crew cast lots to see which of them had offended the God.
This translation, man.
So so that translation assumes that it is the crew.
It assumes it's the crew. Yeah.
Now, who else could it be? Do you have an idea, or is it just weird how the Hebrew words it to suggest that it might not be?
The Hebrew suggests that it's the captain and Jonah who are making this wager.
But
right. But then later on, it's going to say that the men were exceedingly afraid and said, "What is this you've done?" Right. It seems like the crew is involved. Right.
That's what I would think, because...
Which is why we read back into it that it's the crew that made this wager.
It can't be the captain to Jonah, because they said to one another, "Come, let us cast lots, that we might know whose account of evil is upon us." I think it switches back.
You just need two to say we.
Yeah, but Jonah wouldn't cast lots.
He might.
On himself.
He might.
On himself.
Perhaps.
Just because he was running away from God, is that the...
I mean, this could be who knows? This could be a show of bravado, like come, between you and me, let's figure out whose fault this is, right? Is it my fault or is it your fault?
And the lot fell on Jonah.
Right.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
At least that's a possibility, right? Again, right here, we're just making observations, exploring possibilities. I'm not going to interpret the text one way or the other.
I don't know. If you've ever watched the Pirates Who Don't Do Anything, I think it was the crew, man.
Yeah, the whole let's play Go Fish. And by the way, the VeggieTales version of the story of Jonah is actually, it's actually very good.
It's amazing.
In terms of even in terms of catching some of the subtle details of the text that the rabbis tend to highlight and point out.
We're not sponsored. It's just
We're not sponsored. It's just good stuff,
it's just
man.
Good stuff.
You know, if you've never seen it, dude, watch this thing. You don't have to be here. Oh, I'm sorry. No, we don't. Oh gosh. I said too much. Emmanuel.
When they did this, the lots identified Jonah as the culprit.
By the way, another thing too. Come, let us cast lots, that we may see on whose account this evil has come upon us. Right, is what they say. What on earth? Like, imagine you're on like a plane and it's going down, right? The left wing is blown off, right? You're barrel rolling toward the earth at like 40,000 feet. The captain comes on, the air masks, you know, whatever those things are, the pressure masks are on, right? And the flight attendants are scrambling. The captain goes on the speakers. This is your captain speaking. We're going down fast, but I have a pair of dice. And we're going to figure out who done it, right? Like, this is a really weird way of doing things.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're in the middle of this tempest. And the sailors, they've thrown everything off, right? And they're like, all right, let's just cast lots.
Yeah.
Right? Figure out whose fault this is. Josh?
The account fell on Jonah.
Okay.
All right. And they said to him, "Tell us on whose account this evil has come upon us. What is your occupation? And where do you come from? What is your country? And of what people are you?"
Why are the sailors acting like a bunch of old Hispanic ladies? I'm sorry to put it that way, but that's just the way it is. So I'll just give you guys a brief little story, just so I don't sound like terribly awful. Literally 2 weeks ago, I'm at my job, and this old Hispanic lady comes walking up to me, says, "Hey, what's your name?" I say, "Roberto." The first question she asks after that is, "Where are you from?"
Yeah.
That is the Hispanic lady question to ask. Where are you from? Right?
Sure.
And then depending on how favorably you answer, and depending on whether or not you speak Spanish, the next question is, "Do you want to marry my daughter?" But that's no. Oh gosh.
So you said,
Well, you know. Anyway, so it's kind of a weird set of questions that they're asking him.
I got really excited for you for a second.
I know.
Very
I'm
happy.
single, by the way, in case you haven't figured that out.
No, her daughter had an NLT, so he couldn't date her.
So again, why are they asking Jonah these questions in particular? Right? What is it that they're trying to get at? I think it was Emmanuel's turn, right? Yeah.
Jonah answered, "I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven."
You'll notice he's not answering their questions.
Yeah. Who made the sea and the land.
Right. So again, why doesn't Jonah answer their questions? Right? Why does he say this instead? Right. That's a good question to ask. And also, you'll notice he says, "I fear who?"
The Lord,
Right, the Lord. And then your translation is going to have a comma that says the God, right?
the God of heaven. Yeah.
So that's not in the Hebrew. And yours is going to say the same thing. So
Yeah, what is your country and of what people? Oh wait, no.
right.
Yeah,
I fear the Lord, comma, the
comma,
God,
the God
right?
of heaven.
The original Hebrew is, "I fear the Lord God of heaven." Right. And
Yeah, that's just English, like grammar.
yeah, it's just a grammar thing, but it's going to be important,
Yes.
right?
Okay.
That it's the Lord God of heaven and not the Lord, comma, God of heaven.
Yeah.
Right. Just an observation. You going?
Made the sea in the dry land. Then the men were exceedingly afraid and said to him, "What is this that you have done?"
So now they're scared.
Yep.
Why are they scared now and not earlier?
I think they know who he's talking about, who Jonah's talking about.
Perhaps,
I
but
think
I
that-
think
I
they
think they
knew.
do.
But I think they knew before. Keep going.
For he had already told them he was running away from the Lord.
And that is the implication, right?
Oh,
He'd already
okay.
told them he was running from God. Yeah, come on board. You're running from God, so aren't we all? You know.
Word. but they understood, like, oh, he's running from whoever his God is, but they are.
It says. Does it say running from the Lord?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is that. So the Lord Jehovah, right,
Well, this is
is
the presence.
is the Israelite God. They know exactly who he's running from,
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
right?
But they could have, like-
But they weren't afraid until he told them this bit of information.
What the he's. Oh, they already knew that they were fleeing.
Well, because
Right.
he told them that he made the sea and the land. So
That's going to be that's going to be very crucial,
Yeah.
right? That's what they're afraid of,
Yeah.
right? And what I mean, we're already how much time we got? We're already on 35 minutes, so we'll probably have to cut this
I think like 5 or 10 minutes was before. 5 minutes of it was before we started.
It was.
Maybe.
We're so close.
Yeah. We may wind up cutting it anyway.
We have to win.
Just as, but yeah, that's gonna be crucial. I think Josh, it was your turn, right?
Yeah.
So now they're exceedingly afraid, right?
Right, because they told him that he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord because he had told them.
Right.
Then they said to him, "What shall we do to you that the sea may quiet down for us?"
Again, another strange request.
So okay, so like, do we kill you? Like, how do we?
How do we figure this one out, right? But you'll notice they don't actually want to kill him. They
just want the sea to quiet down.
They just want the sea to quiet down, right? They're like, "What do we have to do to you?"
Yeah.
Right? But you'll notice they don't really want to kill him, right?
Yeah.
Keep going.
Throw me into the sea, Jonah said.
You missed a part.
Oh yeah, right.
Unless your translation completely scraps
No.
this part too. No.
What? Oh, why did you do it? They groaned. And since the storm was getting worse all the time, they asked him, "What should we do to you to stop this storm?"
Oh, that's interesting. Yours puts it before they ask the second question.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's
It's hurting my brain.
that is kind of weird.
Yeah, because in mine it says they said to him,
It's
"What shall we
after,
do to you?"
because
so
the
the sea may quiet
For
down.
the sea grew more and more tempestuous.
Right. That's,
yeah. Whatever. Just go, man. Just keep reading.
Throw me into the sea, Jonah said.
That's like, can we just like pause real quick? Again. Throw me into the sea, right? You'll notice again, this is actually the same word. Hurl me into the sea is what he says. So again, boot, NLT. But, so if you were Jonah, right? And if you were a rational organism, right? What shall we do to you so the sea may quiet down for us? You're Jonah. You're this super prophet, right? You've got this like real intimate connection with God, right? God speaks to you directly, and you're called in 2 Kings the servant of the Lord, right? That's you're no joke, right? You're on a par with Moses and Solomon and all these other people who are called servants of the Lord, right? And like, what would you do?
Pray.
You'd say, I'm going to pray to God, right? And I kind of know what I'm supposed to do, right? I got to go to Nineveh. So what if we just turn the boat around?
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that's what the sailors are going to do. They're going to try to do that. That's the rational response,
Yeah.
right? No, you're running from God. You got to go back, right?
Yeah.
And Jonah doesn't do that. He says, chuck me into the water, right? Now, again, does Jonah know the fish is going to pick him up? No. Right? What is he getting at? What does he want to happen right now? Right? Continue.
Well, I think that he doesn't want other people are suffering because of his actions. I mean, there's that's just what I thought of.
It's
So,
possible.
It's possible.
Right? That's certainly the way the rabbi are going to interpret it. The rabbis are going to interpret it.
Right, because then he's like, "Well, just throw me into the sea. I'll keep running on my own." You know.
Right.
Like he's gonna keep running. He's not. He has no intention. If he had an intent of going back, he'd turn the boat around. You know.
Right.
He would have
Exactly.
done it.
Yeah.
Anyways, where are we? What should we do then? See me quiet down. Pick me up, hurl me to the sea, see me quiet down. For I know it is because of me that this great tempest has come upon you. Great tempest. There's another great right there. Is that the other one? Or no?
Oh, geez. There's one great that is.
Because in this one it says
that the one?
terrible.
I
This terrible storm.
Right. I think it's I think this one is not Gadol. I think this one is Meod.
Okay.
Which is but I could be wrong.
Well, we'll confirm in the next one. So a great tempest has come upon you. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to get back to dry land, but they could not, for the sea grew more and more. That confuses me. Is that what you were saying, that they tried to turn around, or that they just kept going? Okay.
No, they try to turn around. They're trying to get back to dry land.
Okay.
Is what it says, right?
But they could not. So therefore they called out unto the Lord, O Lord, let us not perish for this man's life, and lay not on us innocent blood. For you, O Lord, have done as it pleased you.
Right. So they certainly don't want to actually kill him.
Right.
Right. But they're kind of placed in this position where, okay, we're going to have to. Right? He said throw him into the water. We didn't want to do this, but so be it. If this is the way it's going to be. Right? If this is the way we survive. Right? And this is what the prophet of the Lord is telling us to do. I guess we do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Then the sailors picked Jonah up and threw him into the raging sea.
So I think that's 4, right? That's the 4th hurl,
Yeah.
right? And again, we counted 4 downs before as well,
Yeah.
right? So there's this like weird repetition of phrases going on here. Just want to point that out.
Yeah. And the storm stopped at once. The sailors were awestruck by the Lord's great power, and they offered him a sacrifice and vowed to serve him. Now the Lord had arranged for a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was inside the fish for 3 days and 3 nights.
Nice. So we made it.
That means me and Emmanuel won.
I suppose it does.
Yeah. $20.
We beat you at we beat you at your own game.
Yeah. Man.
We read the Bible, bro. We did it.
Yeah.
We
couldn't stop us
You
from
couldn't
reading.
stop us. You can't stop the Bible.
You can't stop with a word, y'all. The word is power. No. All right. I just want to make one point before we conclude this. Can we just notice how like Jesus-like Jonah is right now? It seems like like what Jesus? Like what about this is Jesus-like? Right? Jonah is like he's acting rather erratically, right? But you'll notice that this episode is echoed in a gospel story where there's a storm. The disciples are in a boat, and Jesus goes into the belly of the ship and falls asleep, right?
Oh,
He's woken up by his disciples. Jesus gets up and tells the storm to quiet down in the words used in the book of Jonah, right? When he says, "Sea, be still," right? That's when the sea ceased from its raging, or actually, the sea ceased from its raging. That's what yours says. I don't know if that's what yours says, so I'm going to forget that.
Yeah.
Right? The sea ceased from its raging, right? The sea hushed, right? That's what Jesus says to the storm, hush, right? And the storm quiets down, right? Jonah calms the storm, Jesus calms the storm, echoing each other, right? So just as this has nothing to do with the story of Jonah itself per se, but you may want to start asking yourself why it is that Jesus chooses to model his miracle on the story of Jonah.
Yeah, and he also compared himself to Jonah.
And compared himself to Jonah, as we mentioned in the other podcasts.
Yeah.
Right? This is just another point on that, on that theme.
Well, I mean, like, what if the reason that Jonah fell asleep in the ship was because he had so much trust in the Lord that, like, he knew that the storm was going to calm down at a certain point?
We'll see. But like I said, we're going to get to the answers in the next podcast, and we'll start to pick apart Jonah's psychology a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you guys got nothing else, I will see you all on the next podcast. Let's see, what would Rocky say? Like, subscribe, leave a comment. My email is in the description if you want to ask any questions. So yeah, that's Roberto Urena No, not that email. RobertoUrena2001@gmail.com. Until next time.
Peace out, Girl Scouts.
Ta-ta.
Yeah.